Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. David Guthrow, discover fresh perspectives, back with some more fresh perspectives. And today I have the pleasure of being with my friend and colleague, Sandeep. Welcome, Sandeep.
Thank you, David. How are you today?
Well, given that just a moment ago I totally butchered the pronunciation of your last name, I'm over that now, and I'm totally calm and ready to dive into a rich conversation.
Ah, fantastic. Acceptance. Let me help you out. So for all your listeners, I am happy to be here. My name is Sandeep Aujla.
There you go. I couldn't have said it better myself. That's a given. So, Sandeep, we're going to talk a little bit about or explore one of your sources of passion, not about inner peace. But before we do that, maybe you could just let our listeners know a little bit about you and what you do, because this is just a small piece of that.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to. Um, my name is Sandeep, and I run a small company that provides coaching and consulting services in the Greater Toronto Area in Canada. And we primarily work with health leaders, both senior leaders and their executive teams, supporting them to make tough decisions, work through developing strategies and deploying their strategic plans, making sure they can work from clarity and conviction.
Okay, so some would say, okay, so she's a business person and inner peace. How does that fit with all that work you're doing? So, Sandy, maybe you could just start by saying what you mean by inner peace, and then let's
Mhm.
dive into the conversation.
Oh, so one of the things I was sharing with David before we jumped on this call, this is a relatively new endeavor for me to talk publicly about inner peace. Not that there's anything taboo about the topic, I just have not publicly integrated this idea into my business work. So, talking about fresh perspectives, and I thought, what is one idea that really is something that I'm going to make more explicit in how I serve my clients? Inner peace, in my opinion, is that grounding and inner confidence and a lack of agitation that people feel when they're trying to accomplish something to have an outer impact. So, most of the leaders I work with, they have really big dreams and aspirations. They want to make a big difference, both in the people they're serving, their direct reports, and also the public or the community. And most of them are working extremely hard and trying to make a difference. But not everybody is actually feeling fulfillment within. Some of them are haggard, they're exhausted, they are stressed. A small proportion that I've been observing who really are able to have impact for the long term, so sustainable impact, are those that somehow have created practices in their daily life that keep them grounded, that keep them fueled, and also gives them the perspective that is necessary. So they show up with such calm. Doesn't matter what chaos exists outside.
So, when I heard the word calm, is inner peace the same as calm? Are they related to calm? Or, my sense is that it's probably more deeper than just being calm, right? Which is
Uh,
sometimes the way we appear outwardly to the rest of the room.
Agreed. Agreed. I do think it's much broader. And these are early days of me trying to figure out how to talk about inner peace. But I do believe it's more than calm. Because is usually associated with stillness. And there is, in my definition of inner peace and the work that I am doing with some of the leaders, inner peace is not stillness. It is the stillness of conviction, but comes from deep thinking work that these people do. It's also the time they take to spend by themselves, perhaps in nature, perhaps in meditation, perhaps working out, which was the most common way people, try to find inner peace and sanity in their day. But it's also in simple pleasures of life, time you're spending with children or pets or hobbies. It's quite an interesting combination of how we are. And maybe I'm like putting a lot of things together in inner peace. Time will only tell. But right now, I really feel it's broader than the stillness and the calm. But all these factors and disciplines keep you aligned in terms of what you're doing and what you're meant to do versus being on an autopilot and just doing, doing, doing. Inner peace is about being and doing.
So by the time, and it's got my mind whirling here. So by the time this episode airs, the Olympics will have come and gone by
That's true.
by quite a few months. And when I think of the intensity of working out in competition that athletes go through,
Mm-mm.
is inner peace something that athletes can embrace? I mean, it kind of, I think when you think, oh, this activity is go, 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 adrenaline pumping, all that sort of thing, is there still room for inner peace? And is that something that actually helps someone compete at a higher level? I'm rambling all over the place here, but that's what started going through my mind.
Love that analogy. Um, that is how I witness it. Obviously, I have not conducted any empirical research to validate that that's how it is. But what a beautiful scene. Imagine an athlete just about to jump in or whatever sport they're playing in Olympics. There's so much energy and chaos around. And you look at when the camera zooms on the face of this athlete, they are still. They have confidence. They are going into a zone that they have practiced for 4 years. So I think that really is inner peace. And that's what translates into outer impact.
So, yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about my own work, and just before standing in front of a group, I do so much planning, and then, at some point when I step onto the stage, there is nothing more I can do to prepare. And just what I mentally tell myself is, okay, um, letting go. And I don't know if that's the same as you know, inner peace. And if it is, it's momentary. It's not something that I
Mhm.
practice, but there's just acceptance, I guess, is the other word that occurs to me, and how that's connected to inner peace.
This is where things get really tricky in terms of these are words that we typically don't associate with business and aspiration, acceptance. Uh, Here is my personal angle to this. I I was born a Sikh. I'm very proud to be a Sikh, and um, the Living Guru is actually the book is called the Living Guru, and I went through and read the whole scripture for the second time only. And one of the things that really popped up again and again was this idea about peace and poise. And the idea is a life well lived. When I reflect on how that shows up in the context of work and leadership, I feel it's the intention that leaders bring to have an impact. Those intentional leaders, they can really maximize their impact if they're poised or poising themselves for both inner peace and outer impact rather than just looking outward. It's almost kind of giving yourself permission, which is part of acceptance, but it's also the intention which really brings that balance um, to how you show up. Because imagine, think about the speech you were talking about when you're facilitating a session. If the goal is, I'm going to do a massive, amazing job, make the client very happy, make sure everybody has a really good time and they get valuable nuggets out of it. What about you? How would you like to feel having done that? How do you want to experience the 3 months you spent in planning versus the 4 hours that you facilitate the session? Imagine having it right. Like I can see you smile. It's almost remembering times when we worked on a project that was a great outer success, but we were miserable doing it. Compare that to something that the entire journey wasn't easy, but there is joy and fulfillment because I know I'm aligned and showing up the way I want to be, not just how the world sees the final outcome.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a lot to think about. We'll have to pause this for half an hour before we carry out. No, won't do that. But so you also used a term that I haven't heard used. I can't remember the last time I heard the word poise.
Mm.
And as distinct from pose, which is we hear quite often. But could you say a little bit more about that particular piece? I'm curious because, like I said,
Hmm.
I haven't heard people use that term before in this context.
So I often, when I'm meeting new prospects, for example, for especially the one-on-one coaching work I do, and I am also, it's a chemistry meeting, basically to see whether it's a good idea for us to work together. And when they ask me for the value proposition directly or indirectly, I'm looking for not just any leader, I'm looking for an intentional leader. And then I want to know if they care to have a success that is not just extrinsic, but also intrinsic. That's where the word poise comes in terms of how are you setting yourself up to show up a certain way. So I'm very blessed to work with a lot of leaders who are at a place and time in their lives where it's not just about the doing, but also the being. And it's not just about the legacy that people will know of, but it's the joy that they experienced in walking that path. So poise me, and honestly, I was not using the word until I read it and felt the peace and poise being used again and again. To me, and this may not be correct, I think it's the connection of how we are inside to how we show up and how we end up creating the impact. I literally, the formula I keep on my desk is inner peace equals outer impact.
Hmm.
And this is my barometer of my personal success. And this is the type of clients I'm trying to work with who will measure the value of their lives and the impact they've had through that balance of being and doing.
So if someone has that balance, if they have that inner peace, and you recognize it,
Mhm.
that's all well and good. How about if someone recognizes they're missing something but they don't have that? Like, what do you do to help a person discover, first of all, the value of inner peace, because they have to buy into that concept to put effort into it, because I don't
Right.
think it's not just switching the switch, flipping the switch, going, I got inner peace. To move to a point where they can start to develop that. Like, is it around technique? Is it around insight? Is it around, I know you're brilliant at asking really insightful questions that make people think, but how do you, well, let me be more specific. How do you help a person come to a point of their own inner peace?
Hmm. One of the things I'm recognizing, so I will answer your question, but just some context, not everybody cares for it.
Yeah.
So it's not for everybody. I work with a small proportion of CEOs and senior executives who are like, I don't care. I have a very different agenda right now.
Mhm.
To me, inner peace is, and this is not what you have, but what you don't have. It is the lack of dissonance between how you're showing up.
Mhm.
Because
That,
think about there's this word I am, oh, the word is completely slipping my mind right now, but it's not irritation, but it's a frustration in your mind when there is a dissonance between what you want, how you
mhm,
want to be, how
mhm,
you want to show up, and how you are based on your circumstances, work, what have you. So, for example, a leader who I work a lot with healthcare leaders who grew up thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be the most compassionate leader. My door will always be open and anybody can access me, and I am going to be empathetic and compassionate. They end up running 5 different branches of, an institution, geographically spread out, thousands of people relying on them. The role that they're playing does not involve the same level of one to one access to people. And if the leader does not make the shift between how I today show impact or create impact for the thousands of people is not through those one-on-one conversations
mm,
with the masses, but with a few that report to me. Um, there's a big difference in terms of how they have Okay, I'm losing my thought here, but basically, where you had an idea of who you want it to be, but what circumstances allow you or not. And those that can create a congruence will find more peace. It's not that they're working less hard or they're in less challenging roles, but it's the alignment between what you want and value and what you have or do. Does hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of people that I've chatted with over my lifetime, and there's some people that I have a conversation with him or her, and there's so many different words you could use, grounded or things like that, but just that, the person is 100% there. There's no angst in the
Angst
conversation.
was the word. Yes,
Hey,
there's no angst. That's it. Thank you. That's the word.
and you can almost sense it,
Mm.
even because I do have some clients that are really good, people, and that's really important too. But sometimes in the conversations, there's just this intensity that doesn't scream inner peace, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't normally think about it in those terms, but reflecting back on some conversations, and these are people who I think are great at the job, they're great leaders, but you just sense that there's well, we don't have the congruence that you talked about,
Mm.
the alignment between inner and outer.
Yeah. Oh, the angst, that's the word. Yeah. And it's interesting because there's also a perception in our society that because we don't talk about words like peace and they're too soft or non business words, we are directly or indirectly nurturing leaders to prescribe to that way of intensity and being. We're not inviting the small subgroup who are like, you know what, that's not who I want it to be. But because they get swept into, the current, and it's like, well, I guess that's how CEOs are. I guess that's how executives are supposed to be. But to have that courage to say, you know what, I don't have to be that way, and I can still create an impact.
I wonder if there's society kind of has a bias that if you're not appearing intense and animated, that, excuse me, you're not taking your job seriously.
Mm,
That I've recently been reading about some of the Stoic philosophers from thousands of years ago, right? And some of the ways that they look at things, do we value someone who's stoic in the broader sense of stoic, or do we think, how could you be a good leader because you're so calm? And I think
yeah.
there's some overlap between, the inner peace and that you're talking about, and the acceptance of the Stoics and the way they look at about things. So just kind of connecting a whole number of different concepts here. And I also wonder too. I'm doing a lot of wondering. This is actually therapeutic for me, Sandeep. So, is I wonder if a recognition that I don't have inner peace and I'm looking for it, the
Mm.
pursuit of that actually gets in the way of experiencing inner peace.
Yes, I think there are many quotes that would say, yes, the pursuit of happiness is the problem or is the barrier. Um, I think the wondering and reflection would help, but how many people are actually wondering? If we talk about inner peace the same way we've talked about success, we would have lost the opportunity that peace conversation offers. It's not a pursuit. I
Mhm.
think that's where acceptance comes in. It is. This is one of the thought leaders that I really appreciate, Benjamin Hardy. He does a lot of referencing to Alcoholics Anonymous in terms of different ideas of change. And one of the quotes, allegedly in AA, is that all progress starts by telling the truth.
Mm.
How many of us actually tell the truth or accept the truth to what is happening with us? What do we really want? What am I actually good at? What is reasonable? What is something that people, most of the, everybody's, not everybody, but most people's to do list is mile long, impossible to fit into the 24 hours in a day. And that causes frustration. One of the most common ways that I see people get frustrated and lose the peace is all the people that feel, oh, you know what? Yes, I have hundreds of emails that I need to look at, or these two, major projects or strategic initiatives that I need to give feedback on. Maybe on the weekend, maybe Saturday morning, maybe Sunday evening. Just I'm going to take a couple of hours. And guess what? Life is already waiting. You have paused your life for the weekend. Weekend arrives. You have a gazillion other commitments. You're burnt out. You don't end up making time. But guess what? You've actually stolen away the joy of knowing that you honored a weekend. You took those 2 days for rest and rejuvenation and connection. It's acceptance of what is, and can I honor it? And I think there is, in this context, acceptance finally makes sense as a word,
Mhm.
rather than the pursuit of, oh, I'm going to create a life where I will have so much inner peace. No, okay, let me find where the dissonance is. What are the pieces I need to remove? It's almost subtraction rather than addition. And deeply.
I'm just thinking of all the list of things I'm not going to do today, and I'm feeling much better about it. So, so let's say after listening to this conversation, someone says to themselves, "I like the notion of inner peace. I don't think I don't think I have it
Mm.
now." Like,
Yeah.
how would you suggest that a person just begin on, because I suspect it's a journey more than a destination to inner peace, but
Yeah.
how might one start? What's one step when, they press pause or they say, "Okay, on to the next podcast," something that they can start to think about or do that will help them on their journey to discover their own inner peace?
I will give you step one. Step zero is I want to thank you, listener, for having the intention and your inner intuition asking you to pause. I think that is worth acknowledging. And once you've done that, and we're talking about not prescribing to the
Mhm.
contemporary or the long-standing definitions of success. If you could answer just one question for yourself, whether it's evolution of writing, thinking, talking, what would inner peace look like?
Mm. Mm.
And if you wanted to be more specific, because that's really the nitty gritty, what would inner peace life look like? What would a year of inner peace look like? What would my week of inner peace? And what would my day? I will tell you, David, doing that exercise has helped me realize, because I am a recovering workaholic, and I worked, yeah, all hours of the day. And what I've realized is I need detachment from work every single day, non negotiable, non negotiable. After 6 p.m., I cannot be looking at email, worrying about work and what have you. Oh, the quality of my life that has improved, the energy it has released. It's a subtraction. It's clarity of knowing. And honestly, probably I wasn't doing much good after 6 anyway. But knowing and giving myself permission, the same is true for weekends. Well, not every weekend cannot be a work thing, but one weekend per month. That's fine if there is a major, work initiative that I need to take care of. But the remaining, non-negotiably,
Mhm.
cannot be about work. The energy it liberates, um, I would love for anyone who is hearing to experiment with this idea about, and it doesn't have to be the same thing. Because you may say, well, that's not really detachment because I am still taking care of kids and running errands and doing this and that. You define what that is. And I invite you to be both aspirational and pragmatic. So there is joy in keeping promises to yourself. Part of inner peace is the discipline that when you say, you know what, 1 hour in a 7 day long week, 1 hour is when I am going to do nothing, or I'm going to read my favorite book, or I am going to just tug away in a nook and call my best friend, whatever it may be. And then you honor that, see the feeling that dawns on you. I think that may look like inner peace, and see how that allows you to show up differently the following week.
I know that one of the I don't really think of it as a practice or a discipline, but it probably is. But every morning before I come into the office, I go for a walk in an old growth forest park, with my little dog here. And I think you have a dog too.
Yes.
And when I'm doing that, the last thing I think about is work. I'm looking at trees. I'm looking for something that I haven't noticed before, taking a photograph or something like that. So, and I really feel it if I come into the office and I haven't had a chance to do that. If I have an
Wow.
early morning appointment, and that's been really a gift for me living where I am. Not everyone has the opportunity to, to be near mountains and ocean, all those kinds of things. But I don't know that I'm going to be more intentional about it because if I feel I have to walk the dog in the park in the morning, to kind of take me away from inner peace. But my hope is that I don't think there's anyone that's listening to this that can't somehow afford the time just for themselves to detach and just
Hmm.
be as much in as they are out, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
and it does. And I just want to go back to your comment about the nature walk. That is walking meditation. And I am no meditator, but walking meditation basically means that you're present without judgment, paying attention. That is about focus. Meditation is misunderstood as, oh, it's supposed to be a relaxing exercise of I'm going to manage my thoughts. No, it's the discipline of just being present, bringing your awareness back. In your case, the beautiful forest. For someone living in the city that may not have the luxury of beautiful awe of nature, it's still a physical movement. There is so much research that talks about the difference that movement creates. And I think it can be absolutely anything. It does not have to be one or the other. But in your case, if I may, my invitation to you, David, would be to say, I'm committed to not having 7 a.m. meetings because that's it. That's it. My
Yep.
meetings start at 8 a.m. Unless, of course, it's $1 million contract. You know what? You'll make an exception.
One.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
one.
yeah, just once.
But otherwise, and that is the discipline. And I think that is what, we're inviting others to see your discipline may look something different.
That's a great suggestion. And I have a suggestion for, well, first of all, I'll thank you very much for being here, Sandeep. I love every conversation we have, and this one
As do
has been
I.
absolutely no exception. It's been great. So thank you for being here. Guess just before we close off, my suggestion was to people that are listening to this that when it ends, do nothing for just a few moments. Just see what that's like to do nothing and just be there and sit with it as a little gift to yourself. So that would be my wish for those that are listening. And again, thank you so much for your ideas, for making me think about a lot of things, which happens every time we have a conversation. And I wish that more clients and friends have the opportunity to take advantage of your inner peace and calmness when you interact with them. So thank you.
Thank you so much, David. It's always a pleasure.
And this is David Guthrow with Discover Fresh Perspectives. Hopefully, you have a few more that you got today that you might be willing to do something with, and look forward to having you listen next week. Subscribe now because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.